Hi everyone, and welcome to the round 7 report from Corus. It was a very eventful round today with lots of exciting play. Vasily Ivanchuk played a queen sacrifice against Magnus Carlsen, but unfortunately it wasn't sound, and the latter managed to consolidate without much difficulty and went on to win before long. Vladimir Kramnik was very lucky to force a draw against Nigel Short after the latter missed a winning continuation late in the game. Jan Smeets offered a double rook sacrifice against Lenier Dominguez that resulted in the latter spending 40 minutes thinking on one move. He accepted the sacrifice, but not long after the game resulted in a draw by a perpetual check, and was one of the sharpest games of the tournament so far. The only other win of the round went to Nakamura against the tournament leader Alexei Shirov, and it's that game I chose to feature for this round. Nakamura had white and open with e4, to which Shirov replied c5, the Sicilian defense, and after knight f3, knight c6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, and e5, the game has gone into the sharp Sveshnikov variation, where black gives up control of d5 early in the game. After this move, e5, d5 is a permanent hole in black's defense, and what's more, after the only move that doesn't allow black to equalize now, knight bd5, d6 is forced in order to stop a knight d6 check with a big advantage to white. And the problem with this is that it emphasizes the weakness of this d6 pawn for black, which is a backward pawn on an open file, which is notoriously difficult to defend. As compensation for this, black has a stronger pawn center with 2-1, the initiative, and in many cases the bishop pair, as white almost always continues with bishop g5 here to take away black's only defender of this crucial d5 square. The book line here is what happened in the game with a6, now bishop takes f6 and g takes f6, which opens the g file, which leads to sharp play on the king's side and gives black the possibility of playing f5 to make his central pawns even stronger if there's an exchange of white's e4 pawn here. So it's a very sharp opening, all things considered, with black accepting structural and positional weaknesses in order to gain some positional trumps himself, with the resulting imbalance typical of Sicilian situations. It should be noted too here that instead of g takes f6, queen takes f6 loses to knight c7 check is just completely winning for white, so g takes f6 is forced. And now comes knight a3, also forced, and f5 from Shirov, further challenging the white center and aiming to quickly liquidate the weakness of these doubled pawns. This is the last book move of the game, as here Nakamura played knight c4. In Fritz's database, either bishop d3 or bishop c4 are the only given continuations, so this is new ground as far as Fritz is concerned, although I'm sure this position must have been reached before at GM level many times. Perhaps it's Nakamura's preparation. He may reveal in the press conference after the game, or it's probably taken place by now. I don't know if he did reveal it because I haven't seen it yet. I don't think it's on the web just yet, but we'll see anyway. In any case, Shirov answered with knight d4, but Fritz thought this gave white an edge and preferred instead rook g8 with good pressure down the semi-open g-file, although this jettisons castling rights on the king's side. After e takes f5, bishop takes f5, and knight e3, the position is objectively equal and still nicely imbalanced with good middle game play to come. So knight d4 anyway. Now e takes f5, which is perhaps a small inaccuracy from Nakamura, as this allows black to equalize and surrenders some of white's central grip. An interesting alternative is knight d5, although it gives white no more of an edge than the game continuation with e takes f5. Nakamura's obviously got a few tricks up his sleeve, the main one being after bishop takes f5, knight e3, attacking the bishop. So bishop g6 is best, and now knight cd5, and this does gain white an edge, so very nicely posted knight here on d5, and due to that maneuver, after e takes f5, the knight's supported by this knight on e3, and white has no holes in his defense at this stage, and these factors, at least for now, are more significant than black having two pawns against none now in the center, and also the bishop pair. So Shirov continued with bishop h6, which is a nice square for the bishop from where it can carve down into the white position, and it can't be opposed by a dark square bishop, of course, because white's traded it off in order to emphasize this d5 weakness. And Nakamura continued with c3 to evict this well-posted knight, although it creates a hole here at d3. So Shirov played knight e6, and now came bishop d3, which is looking to exchange off his bishop and relieve black of his bishop pair, which is a standard plan when you have one bishop against two. Bishop takes e3 is how Shirov continued, which is black's best hope at gaining equality, although it gives up the bishop pair. And knight takes e3 is how Nakamura recaptured, but Rybka was suggesting f takes e3 on the Chessbomb website as even better, maintaining this knight here at d5. And queen h4 check is probably the reason why Nakamura didn't play it, because this provokes more weaknesses after g3. It's now f3 and h3 are permanently weakened. So Nakamura decided to keep everything solid instead with knight takes c3. Now came queen b6 from Shirov, applying pressure to b2 whilst retaining protection of this weak pawn at d6. And here Nakamura castled, and now came knight f4. He wasn't worried about queen takes b2, because now comes bishop takes g6, h takes g6, and queen takes d6 with a big edge to white. So knight f4. And here Nakamura played bishop e2, not wanting to open the h-file with bishop takes g6, and this is understandable. In the last variation with bishop takes g6, white got good counterplay against it, with taking on d6, but it's not so in this continuation. The knight's well posted here at f4, and Shirov does have some pressure now after rook g8, and here Nakamura thought for a long time about how to defend, and eventually decided on bishop f3 with pressure on b7 that wins back the pawn that black is now able to win, with a tactical idea that Shirov played immediately, although Fritz thinks it was better to postpone it and play instead rook d8 here, because after, for example, queen d2 and d5, black has equalized and has a promising position with good central grip and pressure. However, Shirov instead played that tactical continuation, knight h3 check, which forces king h1. Playing instead g takes h3 results in a completely lost position after bishop c2 check from the rook here at g8, and now say, for example, bishop g2, bishop takes d1, rook a takes d1, and black wins easily with a queen against two minor pieces. So after knight h3 check, it has to be king h1, and now knight takes f2 check is playable, because after rook takes f2 there's queen takes e3, which is what Shirov played. And here we see the idea of Nakamura's bishop f3, because now he wins the pawn back with bishop takes b7, effectively trapping the black king in the center, whilst also applying pressure to d6 here. And after this rook moves, black won't be able to castle, so the king will be properly stuck in the center. And it's a very nice conception from Nakamura, because in conjunction with this queenside pawn majority, it's going to give him a lot of play throughout the game. And even at this stage, he has an edge of 0.50 in the position, so he's done very well out of the opening. And rook b8 is how Shirov answered, which is the correct defensive move. Another possibility was queen takes f2, but now comes not bishop takes a8, but queen takes d6, threatening bishop c6 mate, and the best defense for black is to deflect it with bishop e4, but now simply bishop takes e4 and white's winning. The threat again is bishop c6 mate, and the only decent way to defend is with rook c8, but now bishop c6 check forces rook takes c6, and now queen takes c6 check, king f8, queen d6 check, king g7, queen takes e5 check, and white is 2 pawns up with a stronger position and a game that will be winning before long. So after bishop takes b7, rook b8 is how Shirov continued. Okay, that's the end of part 1.